So we'll start with Rio Tinto, Kennecott, Utah Copper on their Copperton Highline reclamation. The category is outstanding final reclamation or site restoration. Please introduce yourself and begin your program.
All right, thanks for the opportunity to present this project to the board. My name is Trevor Heaton. I'm a reclamation engineer, senior reclamation engineer for Rio Tinto-Kennecott. I'm happy to present this project. It's been a fun project for me, and it's been interesting to see the change in the site as we've moved forward with this reclamation. What this project is there's a historic railroad grade that extended from the Bingham Canyon mine up to the historic Bonneville Crusher. This map, if you take a look at this map, notice that the north arrow is to the right. Bingham Canyon is up in the upper left section of the figure. You have the Great Salt Lake to the north, tailings impoundment to the north, and then the town of Magna is down here. If my cursor will show up, down here in this area. The Copperton Highline extends from the Bingham Canyon mine up to the historic Bonneville Crusher and was used to haul ore from the mine up to the crusher for further processing. The portion of this project, the reclamation of this project is shown in yellow, and this is the portion of the rail line that was reclaimed associated with the reclamation of the Copperton Highline project. Zooming in on the yellow, once again the north arrow is to the right. You see that this project extends from Harker's Canyon over here to the left to the south, and it extends up to the site of the historic Bonneville Crusher area. This line in the middle kind of delineates where our final reclamation took place. North of this line, there's several areas that have the potential future use for borrow pits and source material for construction projects. So north of that line was somewhat of an intermittent seeding, but south of that line is where the final reclamation took place. It consisted of about 3 miles of final reclamation of the railroad grade. When this railroad grade was constructed, they basically came in and filled in drainages and cut through peaks and topographical features to provide a planar surface for the railroad to pass through. Ballast from the railroad ballast consists of slag from the smelter. So slag from the smelter was brought in as railroad ballast, and you can see the considerable amount of fill that was used to fill in drainages. If you notice this telephone pole will give you a sense of scale for this particular fill in this particular drainage, and you can see some of the railroad ballast that was from the smelter slag that was brought in. By regulation, in order to reclaim this project, Kennecott would be required to remove railroad ties and rails and to remove the railroad ballast. However, there's not necessarily any requirement to address the planar feature of the railroad grade that was created in order to construct the railroad. There is a consideration in the regulations that we need to leave the area, the environment, in a maintenance-free environment. We need to establish a maintenance-free environment. What that means is basically in some of the drainages where Kennecott had come in and to construct the railroad grade, they'd place fill material in a lot of these drainages. This is a schematic that illustrates just a simple fill bridge going over a drainage. Here you have the Copperton rail line moving across. This is a simple schematic of a natural drainage moving through. As they filled the drainage to allow the trains to cross over, they had to establish culverts in these drainages to allow water to free flow from upstream to downstream in each of the drainages. In order to create a maintenance-free environment, Kennecott was basically required to remove the culverts. There's no requirement to remove this additional fill material, no requirement to address the planar surface of the railroad grade. If you notice the proximity of this project to the town of Magna. North of this line, much of the railroad grade is hidden behind hills and small mountains through cuts. And so much of this isn't seen by the surrounding community. However, south of this line is very visible to the valley and to the surrounding community of Magna. Where this project goes above and beyond regulations is that instead of just reclaiming the site to regulatory requirements, it reestablished much of the viewshed for the surrounding community and the town of Magna. One of the ways that it did this above and beyond regulations is in the drainages. By regulation, we're required to excavate a minimum amount to remove the culverts. Instead, Kennecott excavated additional amounts of soil to match upstream and downstream topographical features within the drainages. Many times this required the movement of a considerable amount of material in order to reestablish these drainages. It's illustrated in this slide. If you notice, up here to the right, you have a culvert. By regulation, Kennecott could have excavated a minimum amount of material to remove this culvert and establish a maintenance-free environment. However, they moved quite a bit of dirt to reestablish the topographical features and to match the existing natural topography both upstream and downstream of this drainage. Like I said before, there's no requirement to address the planar features of the railroad. However, the planar railroad grade is definitely visible to the surrounding communities. Because so much material was removed from our drainages, it allowed us to move this material and to use this material to reestablish areas that had been cut and reestablish small peaks or valleys and reestablish topographical features to create the viewshed that used to exist before the railroad was established and the railroad was constructed. This picture illustrates my point. Bringing that material in, you go from a planar feature to all of a sudden you have topographical features and small peaks and valleys that reestablish the viewshed. Again, you can't tell that a railroad grade came through here. There's no planar railroad feature. You have undulating hills and valleys. This is a drainage that was reestablished, a small drainage. Basically that was filled in. Everything this side of those trees is new reclamation. And once again, you can see the topographical features that there's no evidence of a railroad grade going through there. You can still see the cut marks from the ripper marks made under the existing vegetation, but the area has been reestablished and you have hills and valleys and small peaks. And this slide shows the town of Magna and basically them being able to see the reclamation that's taken place and the impact that this has on the community. This particular fill, you can see the magnitude of this fill by the railroad or by the telephone pole that is here. Basically, material extended from this peak to this peak, and all this material was removed out from this drainage to reestablish the drainage and reestablish the natural topography. And then once again, no evidence of the railroad grade. So, quick stats of the project. Approximately 3 miles of final railroad reclamation was completed. 11,000 cubic yards of material were moved. Total project cost was about $625,000. Of the 11,000 cubic yards of material that was moved, about 46,000 cubic yards was extra and not required by regulations. Of the total project cost, $210,000 was extra over and above the regulatory requirements for reclamation of this site. Then before and after, this shows the planar compared to the topographical features after the project was completed. This site, so this is during removal. This would be very typical of what you'd see according to regulatory requirements minus the seeding. This is during regrading. You see there's slopes and small features, and then afterwards you see reestablishment of vegetation. Before, this is a large field that was in the valley, and it's, if you notice the scale and the reference points of these telephone poles, If you notice these telephone poles, it'll give you reference point for before, during removal. You can see the same telephone poles, and it gives you a scale of the amount of material that was moved as part of this project. This is same area from a different vantage point. This would probably be from a vantage point over on this side, showing the excavation process. As the drainage was regraded, this is from the bottom, some vegetation that was reestablished, and then the final picture of the drainage. So these pictures up here were taken from this very bottom portion of the drainage. And if you notice the telephone poles, you can see the magnitude of the amount of material that was removed from this drainage. Basically, in conclusion, this project went above and beyond regulatory requirements to establish the viewshed and to restore natural topographical features that existed before the rail grade was constructed. Any questions?
Questions, board members? Thank you very much.